In the golden glow of an international summit where world leaders gathered under crystal chandeliers and the weight of history pressed down like expensive cologne, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria stepped up to the podium with the kind of confidence that makes people lean forward in their seats. The room fell silent, not because protocol demanded it, but because something in his demeanor suggested he was about to say something worth remembering. He adjusted his agbada with the casual elegance of a man who had walked through fire and came out smelling like success, cleared his throat, and began speaking about the United States president with words so glowing they could power a small city. The cameras flashed, the diplomats straightened their ties, and somewhere in the back, a young aide whispered to another, "Is he really about to do what I think he's about to do?" And yes, he absolutely was. President Tinubu's words rolled across that conference hall like thunder announcing rain after a long drought, praising the US president's leadership on climate change with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for winning lottery numbers. He spoke of solar panels spreading across American deserts like technological wildflowers, of wind turbines spinning hope into the atmosphere, of policies that didn't just talk about saving the planet but actually rolled up their sleeves and got to work. The collaboration between Nigeria and the United States on renewable energy projects, he declared, was nothing short of revolutionary, a partnership that proved two nations separated by an ocean could still share the same vision for a sustainable future. His voice carried the weight of genuine admiration, the kind that can't be faked or scripted, and you could see other leaders in the audience nodding along, some probably wishing they thought to give such a speech first. But Tinubu wasn't finished, not by a long shot, because just when everyone thought he'd wrap up with the standard diplomatic pleasantries and everyone could go grab some of those fancy canapes, he pivoted. He pivoted hard. The president of Nigeria, standing on one of the world's biggest stages, suddenly started talking about Nollywood with the passion of a film critic who just discovered the greatest cinema movement since the French New Wave. The confusion on some faces was priceless, diplomats from countries that probably couldn't find Lagos on a map suddenly wondering if they'd missed a memo. Tinubu mentioned Maurice and Sonia Uche by name, these two actors who'd been grinding in the Nigerian film industry, showing up on set before sunrise, memorizing lines while stuck in Lagos traffic, embodying characters with such depth that viewers forgot they were watching performances at all. Maurice, Tinubu explained with the kind of detail that suggested he'd actually watched the man's films, had this ability to transform himself completely for every role, whether playing a struggling entrepreneur in a Lagos market or a conflicted politician wrestling with his conscience. The man could cry on cue, make you laugh with just a facial expression, and deliver dramatic monologues that hit you right in the chest like truth usually does. Sonia Uche, meanwhile, brought a different kind of magic to the screen, a versatility that let her slip between comedy and drama as easily as changing clothes, her performances so natural you'd swear the cameras just happened to catch her living her actual life. Together, and alongside countless other Nollywood talents, they represented something bigger than individual achievement. They were the face of an entire cultural movement that had gone from producing films in people's living rooms to commanding global attention. The beauty of Tinubu's praise wasn't just that he recognized these actors, it was that he understood what they represented. Nollywood didn't build itself on government grants or corporate sponsorships, at least not at first. It built itself on hustle, on filmmakers maxing out credit cards to rent equipment, on actors showing up to sets where lunch meant everyone chipping in for jollof rice from the nearest mama put, on directors shooting scenes guerrilla style in actual Lagos streets because they couldn't afford to close roads or hire extras. This was cinema born from pure determination, from a refusal to wait for permission or proper funding or Hollywood's approval. And somehow, against all odds and every logical prediction, it worked. It more than worked. It exploded into the third largest film industry on the planet, pumping out thousands of films annually, creating stars, launching careers, and telling stories that resonated from Abuja to Atlanta. The economic impact alone was staggering, the kind of numbers that make finance ministers sit up and pay attention. Nollywood had become a job creation machine, employing hundreds of thousands of people directly and millions more indirectly, from the actors and directors everyone knows about to the makeup artists, caterers, location scouts, costume designers, equipment renters, and that guy who somehow always knows where to find a vintage car for period pieces. The industry pumped billions of naira into the Nigerian economy annually, money that circulated through communities, paid school fees, funded small businesses, kept food on tables. It had become an economic pillar as solid as oil or agriculture, except instead of drilling or planting, it was built on creativity and storytelling, which when you think about it is kind of beautiful. Tourism got a boost too, because suddenly international viewers who'd never thought twice about Nigeria were watching films set in Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and wondering what it would be like to visit these places in real life. The locations became characters themselves, the bustling markets where deals went down and secrets were whispered, the luxury homes where the wealthy plotted and schemed, the modest apartments where ordinary people lived extraordinary lives. Travel agencies started noticing upticks in inquiries about Nigerian destinations. Hotels reported more international guests mentioning Nollywood films as inspiration for their trips, and somewhere in the tourism ministry, someone probably got a promotion for capitalizing on this unexpected cultural export. But Tinubu wasn't just throwing around feel-good statistics, he was making a deeper point about cultural diplomacy, about how Nigerian stories told through Nollywood were doing more to shape global perceptions than any official government campaign ever could. When someone in Brazil or India or France settles in to watch a Nollywood film, they are not thinking about diplomatic relations or trade agreements, they are connecting with characters, investing in storylines, laughing at jokes that somehow translate across cultural boundaries, crying at losses that feel universal. They are seeing Nigerians as fully human, complex, funny, flawed, aspirational, just like everyone else. That kind of cultural bridge building, that normalization of Nigerian life and stories on the global stage, was what more than any carefully crafted PR campaign could ever achieve. The fashion influence was almost hilariously pervasive if you paid attention to it. Nollywood didn't just reflect Nigerian fashion, it drove it, set it, made it global. Designers who created costumes for major productions found their work suddenly in demand internationally, traditional attire got reinterpreted in contemporary contexts, and suddenly you had people in London and New York rocking encore prints and girly head wraps because they saw them on their favorite Nollywood stars. The industry had essentially become a runway that never stopped, showcasing African fashion to a global audience that was hungry for something different, something vibrant, something that didn't look like everything else they'd been seeing. Fashion bloggers who'd never set foot in Africa were suddenly writing think pieces about Nigerian style, and the economic ripple effects reached textile makers, tailors, jewelry designers, an entire ecosystem of creative entrepreneurship. Music rode the same wave, with Nollywood soundtracks introducing global audiences to Afrobeats, highlife, contemporary Nigerian artists who might otherwise have struggled to break through international barriers. Films needed scores, needed background music, needed theme songs, and Nigerian musicians jumped at these opportunities, creating sounds that enhanced emotional moments on screen and then lived their own lives beyond the films. How many people discovered Wizkid or Burna Boy or Tiwa Savage through a Nollywood soundtrack before these artists became global superstars? The synergy between film and music created a cultural export package that was greater than the sum of its parts, each medium amplifying the other, creating this irresistible cultural force that swept across continents. International collaborations started popping up like mushrooms after rain, with Nollywood producers partnering with filmmakers from other countries, co-productions that blended Nigerian storytelling with technical resources from elsewhere, distribution deals that put Nigerian films on streaming platforms reaching hundreds of millions of subscribers worldwide. Netflix, Amazon Prime, other platforms recognized what was happening and wanted in. Suddenly Nollywood productions were getting the kind of marketing push and global reach that would have seemed like fantasy just a decade earlier. The industry was professionalizing, not losing its distinctive flavor but gaining polish, learning from global best practices while maintaining the authentic voice that made it special in the first place. Awards and recognition followed, the kind of validation that traditional gatekeepers of culture had long denied African cinema. Nollywood films started showing up at international festivals, not in some segregated world cinema category but competing directly with productions from anywhere. Actors won accolades, directors got feted, and gradually the condescending attitude that had long greeted African cinema began to crack. Critics who dismissed Nollywood as low-budget and amateurish found themselves eating their words as production values improved and the storytelling sophistication became undeniable. Major film publications that had barely acknowledged Nollywood's existence suddenly couldn't stop writing about it. Everyone wanted to be part of discovering this emerging industry that had actually been thriving for decades. Yet Tinubu, being the kind of leader who understood that progress requires acknowledging reality in all its complexity, didn't just serve up uninterrupted praise. He pivoted to the challenges, the obstacles that still stood between Nollywood and its full potential. Funding remained a perpetual headache, with most productions still operating on shoestring budgets that would make Hollywood accountants weep. Banks were notoriously reluctant to finance film projects, seeing them as too risky, too unpredictable, which meant filmmakers had to get creative, pooling personal resources, finding private investors willing to take chances, sometimes compromising artistic vision for financial feasibility. The lack of proper funding infrastructure meant many potentially brilliant films never got made, or got made so cheaply that technical limitations undermined the storytelling. Distribution presented its own nightmare, a labyrinth of challenges that could kill even the best films. Piracy was rampant, with movies showing up on illegal streaming sites and DVD copies sold on street corners before official releases could gain traction, bleeding away revenue that should have gone to creators. Former cinema infrastructure was limited, with Nigeria having far fewer movie theaters than a country of its size and economic potential should have. This meant filmmakers often struggled to recoup investments through traditional theatrical releases, had to rely on direct-to-video or streaming models that offered different economics. Getting films into international markets remained complicated, tangled up in distribution rights, territorial restrictions, platforms that paid poorly or not at all, middlemen who took substantial cuts while adding questionable value. Production standards varied wildly, which was both understandable given the resource constraints and frustrating given how it affected Nollywood's reputation. You'd have films with absolutely brilliant scripts and powerful performances hamstrung by terrible sound mixing or inconsistent lighting or editing that felt rushed. Sometimes the same production would have gorgeous cinematography in one scene and weirdly framed shots in the next, suggesting equipment or expertise limitations. The quality inconsistency made it harder to market Nollywood as a whole, because potential international audiences who stumbled across a poorly produced film might assume all Nollywood productions were similarly compromised, not realizing they just encountered one end of a very broad spectrum. Training and development programs existed but couldn't keep pace with industry growth, meaning many people learned on the job, picking up skills through trial and error rather than formal education. Film schools were emerging but remained expensive and limited in capacity, and the curriculum didn't always align with Nollywood's specific needs and contexts. Technical crew members, the cinematographers, and sound engineers and editors who make or break a film's quality, were in chronically short supply, leading to situations where the available talent got overbooked across multiple productions simultaneously, spreading themselves too thin, delivering rushed work that showed the strain. Building institutional knowledge and professional standards across the entire industry remained an ongoing challenge. Infrastructure limitations extended beyond just movie theaters to include basic production facilities. Proper sound stages were rare, equipment rental houses didn't always have the latest technology, post-production facilities capable of sophisticated visual effects or color grading were concentrated in just a few cities. This meant filmmakers often had to make do with inadequate tools, shooting in locations that weren't optimized for film production, dealing with technical constraints that required workarounds and compromises. The lack of infrastructure also made productions more expensive and time-consuming than they needed to be, eating into already tight budgets and schedules. Script development and intellectual property protection needed serious attention. Too many films rushed into production with underdeveloped scripts, stories that hadn't been properly workshopped or refined, leading to final products that showed promise but fell short of their potential. The pressure to produce content quickly, to keep up with audience demand and generate revenue, sometimes meant sacrificing the development time that great storytelling requires. Meanwhile, intellectual property theft was common, with ideas getting stolen, scripts getting copied, successful films spawning unauthorized remakes, all because the legal frameworks and enforcement mechanisms to protect creative work remained weak. Marketing and audience engagement presented ongoing challenges. Many productions lacked the resources for substantial marketing campaigns, meaning potentially excellent films disappeared without anyone knowing they existed. Social media had helped democratize promotion, letting filmmakers directly reach audiences, but breaking through the noise required strategy and resources that not everyone had. Building and maintaining audience loyalty across productions, creating brands around production companies or directors or actors that guaranteed attention, remained inconsistent, with a few major players dominating while countless talented creators struggled for visibility. Regulatory issues added complications, with censorship boards sometimes making arbitrary decisions about content, government policies that didn't always support creative industries effectively, taxation structures that treated films like luxury goods rather than cultural products deserving special consideration. Navigating the bureaucracy of permits and approvals could be maddeningly slow, holding up productions, adding costs, creating uncertainty. The relationship between Nollywood and government had improved over the years, with more recognition of the industry's importance, but it remained far from optimal, with much room for policies that could actively support rather than merely tolerate creative production. Yet despite every obstacle, every limitation, every challenge that would have killed a less resilient industry, Nollywood kept growing, kept evolving, kept finding ways to tell stories that mattered. The same entrepreneurial spirit that birthed the industry in the first place continued driving it forward, filmmakers refusing to wait for perfect conditions before creating, actors honing their craft regardless of whether they had access to fancy training programs, technical crews MacGyvering solutions with whatever resources they could access. This determination, this absolute refusal to be stopped by circumstances, was perhaps Nollywood's greatest strength, the quality that ensured its survival and growth even through difficulties that would have discouraged others. The younger generation coming up through Nollywood brought fresh perspectives, different training, new ideas about what Nigerian cinema could be. They'd grown up watching both classic Nollywood and international productions, understood genre conventions and how to subvert them, brought technical skills and ambitions that pushed the industry forward. This new wave wasn't rejecting what came before but building on it, respecting the foundations while constructing new stories, experimenting with form and content, pushing boundaries. The generational dialogue happening within Nollywood, between established veterans and hungry newcomers, created dynamic tension that fueled creativity and evolution. International audiences had embraced Nollywood in ways that still seemed surprising even to people within the industry. The Nigerian diaspora had always been a core audience, hungry for stories from home, for familiar accents and references and context. But increasingly, non-Nigerians were tuning in, drawn by compelling storytelling that transcended cultural specificity, finding universal themes in distinctly Nigerian narratives. The comment sections under Nollywood films on streaming platforms revealed viewers from everywhere, comparing notes about favorite characters, debating plot twists, recommending films to each other regardless of their own backgrounds. This organic, grassroots global fanbase represented something marketing departments dream about: genuine engagement built on quality content rather than expensive promotional campaigns. The impact on how Nigeria was perceived globally couldn't be overstated. For decades, international media had presented limited, often negative narratives about Nigeria, focusing on corruption, conflict, poverty, painting the country in unrelentingly dark tones. Nollywood offered counter-narratives, showing Nigerian life in all its complexity, the struggles and triumphs, the humor and tragedy, the ordinary and extraordinary. It humanized Nigeria for global audiences in ways official messaging never could, because stories are more powerful than statistics, characters more memorable than press releases. Someone who'd watched dozens of Nollywood films couldn't maintain simplistic stereotypes about Nigeria or Nigerians. They'd seen too much nuance, too much humanity, too much that contradicted easy categorizations. So when Tinubu stood at that international summit praising Maurice and Sonia, Uche and Nollywood as a whole, he wasn't just being a supportive leader highlighting his country's achievements, though he was certainly doing that. He was making a statement about soft power, about culture as currency, about how stories shape the world as surely as policies and treaties. He was connecting Nigeria's creative output to its diplomatic relationships, showing how the collaboration he'd praised between Nigeria and the United States extended beyond formal agreements into cultural exchanges that enriched both nations. He was, in his way, arguing that the future of international relations would be written as much by filmmakers and artists as by politicians and bureaucrats. The speech rippled outward from that conference hall, getting picked up by news outlets, discussed on social media, analyzed by commentators who hadn't previously given much thought to Nollywood's global significance. Maurice and Sonia Uche suddenly found their social media followings exploding, international journalists reaching out for interviews, opportunities materializing from unexpected directions. The attention wasn't just about them as individuals but about what they represented, proof that Nigerian talent could compete on any stage, that African stories deserved global platforms, that the cultural conversation was incomplete without voices from Lagos and Abuja and everywhere else stories were being told with passion and skill. Looking ahead, the potential felt limitless even while acknowledging the very real challenges that remained. If funding issues could be addressed, if distribution networks could be built out properly, if infrastructure could catch up to ambition, if training programs could be expanded and enhanced, who knows what Nollywood might achieve? The talent was already there, the stories were already there, The audience appetite was already there. What was needed was the systematic support, the institutional backing, the investment in the industry's future that would unlock potential currently constrained by practical limitations. The fact that Nollywood had achieved so much despite operating under difficult conditions suggested that with proper support, it could become truly unstoppable. President Tinubu wrapped up his remarks that day by drawing everything together: the praise for American leadership, the celebration of Nollywood, the recognition of challenges alongside achievements, all of it connected by a vision of international cooperation and cultural exchange that benefited everyone involved. He left the stage having given a speech people would remember, having elevated Nollywood on a global stage in ways that would have tangible impacts, having demonstrated the kind of leadership that recognizes soft power as real power. And somewhere, probably in a production studio in Lagos, filmmakers and actors heard about the speech and felt a little more validated, a little more seen, a little more confident that their work mattered beyond entertainment value, that it was shaping perceptions and building bridges and contributing to Nigeria's place in the world. So here's the thing worth considering as we close this out: when was the last time you watched a Nollywood film? If you haven't yet, what's stopping you? These aren't obscure art house productions that require special knowledge to appreciate. They're stories about love and betrayal, ambition and failure, family and friendship, all the universal themes that make stories resonant regardless of where they are set. They are available on major streaming platforms right now, waiting for you to give them a chance. And if you have watched Nollywood, when did you last recommend it to someone who hasn't? Because the best way to support this industry, to ensure it keeps growing and overcoming challenges and telling the stories that need telling, is simply to watch, to engage, to share. President Tinubu gave his endorsement from an international stage, but the real power lies with audiences everywhere who can, with just a few clicks, discover what millions already know, that Nollywood is producing some of the most compelling cinema in the world right now. Don't just take his word for it or mine, go watch for yourself. Start with Maurice, Sam or Sonia, Uche if you want specific recommendations, or just browse until something catches your eye. Your next favorite film might be waiting in a category you've been scrolling past, and honestly, wouldn't that be a shame to miss?